In 1947, at the request of his wife, who delivered the ultimatum, get a job or else, Harold Thaine Lyman hitchhiked 500 miles to Chicago in search of a job. He was hired as a broadcast technician at WGN television. This was the beginning of a career that would span 34 years. Lyman somehow knew that he would always work in Chicago, but he had absolutely no idea he would teach. In 1949, Columbia College hired Lyman as one of 2 television instructors. Through the years, with his dedication and perseverance, Lyman became instrumental in establishing Columbia's television department. Mr. Lyman developed a variety of courses which would challenge the students to use their creative abilities. Lyman also formed the Fundamentals of Television course, which gave students basic knowledge of television operations. This course has been the basis for the college's television curriculum. He also invited several top television personalities and management representatives to participate in the Star Series lectures. Students received first-hand information on what it was like to be in the commercial world of television. Courses such as these, instituted by Lyman, have become a focal point of Columbia's television department. Lyman possessed a unique style of teaching. By maintaining a dual career as professional and educator, Lyman was able to achieve an understanding of the working world and aim the qualifications to a school curriculum. Lyman is quoted as saying, "I try to engender the most fertile ground possible in the job market." His efforts at the college certainly prove he's a man of his word. Besides being a full-time employee at WGN and Columbia College, Thaine Lyman was also an active member in many broadcast organizations, including the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences and the National Association of Broadcasters. Even with this hectic schedule, Lyman always found time for his students.
He always had an open door policy. He was never too busy to talk to the students, regardless of how busy he actually was. He would talk to them for hours at the time. And he never closed his door. Thaine was really a people person. He really cared about people. He really loved people. As I mentioned earlier, he never closed his door. You could just walk in and just talk to him, even without an appointment. And I can remember very few times that Thaine said no. As a matter of fact, I can't remember an incident where Thaine said no from requests from students and workers alike. If he needed a hand, he was willing to give it, to lend it.
Lyman had the reputation of a tireless worker who did everything he possibly could to help his students. During the 50s, there were few blacks in broadcasting. 2 of Mr. Lyman's black students were seeking employment and they needed a good reference. Lyman not only agreed to be a reference, he drove all night to the station to speak on behalf of his students. Columbia College President Mike Alexandrov states that Lyman's style of teaching produced results.
He had an insistent regard for professionalism, and I think he expected and demanded of students that they perform to what Thaine would describe as the professional expectations of the whole television undertaking, whether it was in stations or studios or industrial television or wherever television was employed. I think the technical skills, the work skills, as it were, I don't know if technical is the right word, but the operational skills were always paramount.
The professionalism Alexandrov speaks of stems from the roots Lyman established at WGN. Those who worked with Mr. Lyman at WGN knew him as one who always expected the best and gave nothing less.
Whether it was simply a pan or a tilt or a dolly, if he didn't feel right, he'd want to do it over, and he was always stickler for perfection from that standpoint. So I think from him, I observed being concerned about everything you do, whether it's merely walking in the studio to work a mic, a camera, or whatever else. It was always giving a great deal of interest in doing the best job you could with that particular piece of equipment.
Ann Corbell, personnel director of WGN Television, remembers Lyman's helpfulness toward others.
He caused them to take time and understand their fellow man and the young people, primarily understanding themselves. That's very important in this industry so that you don't become cold and callous.
He was always a soft-spoken, easygoing guy, but it was more than that. Underneath that, he was being very aggressive in terms of helping to teach and do things. It's kind of surprising to know all the things that Thaine did and to meet him because he was such a laid-back and easygoing person.
Aside from Thaine Lyman's dual career, he was involved in many outside efforts. Perhaps the most memorable was his strong convictions with the Federal Communications Commission on legislation in the preservation of public policy protections.
The FCC was ready to put it into effect until Thaine got into high gear, and over a summertime, he really knocked it on its tail. It had to do with the reservation of time for public service. The FCC was going to, and has now largely relieved the broadcasters the responsibility of public service broadcasting. And when they first proposed it and were ready to, introduce it, initiate it, make it part of the regulatory procedure, that's when Thaine got into action on the thing. And he must have written 5,000 letters. I mean, I never saw such a one-man gang.
Throughout his career, many recognized Lyman for his efforts. In 1975, he was honored by Women in Broadcasting. And in 1983, he received the Interlake Incorporated Columbia College Media Festival Award for his unceasing effort in behalf of young creative filmmakers of Chicago as sponsor, mentor, and friend. Of all the awards he was honored with, perhaps the one that meant the most was seeing his students succeed. What Lyman taught and what he stood for will not be forgotten. Thank you, Mr. Lyman.